Who were these pilgrims? I wanted to learn from them. I wanted to listen to them. And I wanted to find out what made them so unique. So I bought a ticket to England. I went to retrace the escape route of the pilgrims, our forefathers, to understand who they are, why they did what they did, and how we all got to where we are today. And what I discovered blew my mind and changed everything. My journey began in a sleepy little town called Babworth, England. And I met with this amazing woman who was a local historian and a pilgrim expert named Sue Allan.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you, you too. I'm Kirk.
It was cold, it was gloomy, kind of wet and overcast, and I felt like I stepped into a different world because I'm sitting on a bench and I've got dead people all around me. I've got the tombs and the tombstones of people that had been there since the year 1200. It was funny because as I was talking with her, it almost felt like she was there. I felt like she knew these people, like they were friends of hers, and she just brought them to life.
When I think of pilgrims, I think of what I was taught in elementary school and history class. We think of pilgrims coming over in these funny black and white suits with big hats and belt buckles on their shoes and turkey guns.
No.
Who were the pilgrims?
Broadly speaking, they were part of the Puritan movement, and to really understand where they're coming from, you need to understand what a Puritan is.
Yes.
It's for the first time the Bible is printed in English and put into every church, because until that point there were Bibles in English being smuggled into the country, and they were deemed to be heretical. You could be burned for having an English Bible.
And what was the fear of having English Bibles in the hands of the people?
What would happen if every Tom, Dick and Harry got to read the Bible for themselves and then started to study it, for goodness sake, and realised that the church in the Bible, as Christ had deemed it should be, was not this church with bishops in palaces, growing rich when the parishioners were starving on the land.
People would then hold them accountable.
Precisely.
And they didn't want that.
And as soon as the Bible was in English, that started to happen.
For the first time, these people got Bibles in English that they could hold and study in their own hands, in their own homes, with their children. This to them was worth more than anything else, even more than their own life, because this was God speaking to them.
And it got to a point that by 1593, there was an act against Puritans brought in. And under that law, it became illegal to be a Puritan. Anybody that disagreed with Elizabeth's new church settlement got this name that you could spit out like a curse: Puritan. The state, the Queen, the monarch, used the clergy as their mouthpiece to control you.
And because of that, you had the government controlling the church and the church controlling the people. And so that's where you have the tyranny and the oppression that you can't get away from.
And the thought is coming to them, if this church can't be purified, maybe we should just separate ourselves away from all this unholiness. That's where the word separatist comes from. And that's the dangerous step, because you're stepping away from the church and you're denouncing the monarch in the same breath.
That's right. You're not just switching denominations, as we would think of switching churches today.
This is tantamount to treason.
By leaving the church.
Yes. They're fighting for their survival from that point. because they are going against the king. It's no matter just they're going against the church and the king is the head of it. It's treason.
So there was my first clue. The separatists were coming out from under the reign of Queen Elizabeth and into the rule of King James. And this guy was a tyrant king on steroids. He's the one who actually invented the phrase, the divine right of kings. He bankrupted his nation, he tripled the debt, and he considered himself to be a devout Christian while he was obsessed with hunting down and destroying the most devout people in his land.
One of the things that fascinates me is knowing that once the Bible was translated into English and given to the common man, that changed everything because they started thinking for themselves. They said, this is what the Word of God says. Therefore, church ought to be like what God says it should be, not what the king says. And the king himself is a man who is under authority of the King of Kings. And he too must abide by the law of God.
Once they had come out and shown their true colours, our separatists had no choice but to leave the country or stay and just be slaughtered. And if they were, where was the cause then?
For the pilgrims to be able to continue to meet and hold their worship services, they had to do it underground. And there was this castle, a manor at a place called Scrooby that was surrounded by a moat for protection. They met this way for 4 years. For 4 years, they had to meet in secret. And by candlelight, they would hold their worship services and their Bible studies. They even had their children as lookouts. And then one by one, they would come back to join their parents, their brothers and sisters, and the rest of their church family to worship God. Every time they opened up a Bible, they had to have been looking over their shoulders, knowing that at any moment the door could burst open and the army comes in and hauls you off to prison, leaving your children and your wife destitute without anything. They knew that it brought them to a place where they had to make a choice. They said, either we're all in and we're going to get caught eventually here, or we're going to make an escape, a strategic retreat out of England where we can continue to grow and develop as a community of faith, and one day come back to England to set our friends, family, the church, and the entire nation free from this tyrant.